Hello, everyone. Welcome into another edition of the Behind the Rails of Purdue football on the Believe Network, presented by Bet Online. I'm your host, Brice Vance. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the YouTube channel. Make sure that you guys follow and subscribe to the podcast feed of your choice, whether it is Apple Podcast or Spotify. Just make sure you are subscribed to those because it helps us provide more content for you, like interviews like we're about to do here today during the bye week. So I wanted to get more of a perspective than just what I have here on what we've seen in the last 7 weeks from Purdue. So that's why I reached out to Sam King of the Journal and Courier, located in Lafayette, just a handful of minutes away from Purdue. So I wanted to get his perspective because he's been on the Purdue beat this year, and you can follow him on Twitter or X at Samuel T. King to get all of his thoughts, columns, game recaps. He does a fantastic job of covering Purdue and the team. So if you're not following him, make sure you are doing so and reading all of his work because I think he does a great job. I follow him and look at his thoughts as the games are going on Saturdays. So make sure you're following him on social media. You can follow me on social media as well on Instagram, TikTok, X, Facebook, anywhere you want to get short clips of the show, or if you just want to get some thoughts on or my thoughts on Purdue and how I think they're doing outside of what we do here on the podcast. So before we get into our interview with Sam King, I want to tell you guys about Bet Online. As the presenting sponsor of this podcast, we love the work that they do over there and giving you, the latest lines, odds, stats that you need to know to make sure that you are getting all the correct betting information that you need to place a wager on Bet Online. Football is back, and Bet Online is your number one information source for all your sports wagering info with all the up-to-date stats, news, scores, matchup breakdowns, get all the latest odds and spreads and totals from the NFL to college football to any sport. I mean, it's a long list of sports on there that's just outside of football, but we focus mostly here on college football. And you can get it right at your fingertips with BetOnline's real-time updates on stats, news, and odds. From week 1 all the way to the college football playoff and Super Bowl, BetOnline gives you access to the best football promotions and contests available anywhere online. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. And remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, that's BELIEVE, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, let's get this interview with Sam King started right now. All right, now joining us here on the Behind the Rails of Purdue football podcast is Sam King of the Journal and Courier out of Lafayette. And thanks you for joining me here, Sam.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Catching you at a good week. Hopefully, you have some time off here with Purdue being on a bye. And it feels like the bye comes at a great time for Purdue, just for them trying to get healthy, and hopefully you are trying to recover a little bit after covering this team for 7 straight weeks.
Yeah, and as much fun as it is to cover college football, it's more fun to cover a winning team. And right now, that's been a struggle. So hopefully Purdue can come out of this playing a little bit better. We were supposed to have availability originally with Ryan Walters on Monday, and then he said he had recruiting commitments, so he couldn't do it. And lo and behold, Purdue gets a 4-star tight end yesterday. So I think that his time away from that press conference probably paid off. And that's kind of the hope right now is when you see the guys coming in next year, you're thinking, okay, big things are in the store, even though right now, it looks pretty dim.
Yeah, I want to get into that here in just a moment, but I want to start off kind of going back and what we've seen the last 7 weeks. First off, what were your expectations coming into the season, and how has Purdue either met them or not at all?
Well, I predicted before the season that Purdue would probably go 6-6 and get to a bowl game, which is still possible, but it's getting harder and harder to do that. The schedule is more favorable here in the next 5 weeks than it has been thus far. So That's kind of what Purdue is clinging to right now. Is we've got hopes of going to a bowl game. We have to win 4 out of 5, but Boilermakers know they're definitely capable of that, and I think that it's a team that every game until last Saturday against Ohio State, I felt like Purdue competed, and and probably at least 4 of those losses had a chance to win the game, and just mistakes, fumbles, missed assignments on defense, whatever it might be, and it felt like there's 1 or 2 plays you could take out of several of those games and say, if you make that play, Purdue wins. So it's not like this team is 2-5 and going out and getting blown out every week. It's a team that has been competitive each and every game until Ohio State, and even that, you get a great first drive, and if you make the field goal or you get a touchdown on that drive, I think maybe it plays out a little bit differently, but things just kind of snowballed last Saturday.
Yeah, that's I saw that the same way, and I had a lot of people chiming in, and some buddies who are Purdue fans thinking this is the first time all season we felt like we didn't have the same type of personnel, especially along the lines, and they got pushed around, and obviously when you're banged up in the secondary like Purdue is, Ohio State definitely has the manpower to take advantage of that. You mentioned getting to a bowl game, and I was going to ask you about that in a few questions, but I'll ask you now. If you had to put a percentage on it, what do you give them percentage wise, winning 4 out of the last 5? Obviously, the Michigan game is the toughest, and it might follow a similar format to the Ohio State game, but those other 4 games still feel like they should be pretty winnable games.
Yeah, I think, man, I would say it's a 50-50 right now, which is when you look at a 2-5 team and say they got a 50% chance of winning 4 out of 5 games, you might think I'm crazy, but Michigan game is probably going to be a loss if we're being realistic. And then you have to look at the other 4 games, which is Minnesota, Northwestern, Indiana, and I'm forgetting somebody here, Nebraska.
Yep.
So those all, when you look at what those teams have done, you feel like Purdue could or should at least be competitive in those games and have a chance to win. It's just you can't have those mistakes, the blown assignment that turns into a 50-yard touchdown, or you can't have the fumbles or the interceptions, missed field goals, things that have cost Purdue up to this point. You've got to, quickly use this bye week to your advantage. It should be basically probably a couple days off this week, and then you've got an extra 3 or 4 days of preparation for Nebraska the next week. So hopefully that is something where you can go in basically as prepared as possible, and you see nothing that surprises you. And if you can go to Nebraska, which is a crazy environment, no matter how good or bad the football team is, and get a win there, maybe you start to turn this thing around and believe and think, okay, now we've just got to win 3 out of 4. And then I think Michigan is after that. And then you put yourself up against the wall if you lose that game and have to win 3 straight. But still, I definitely think 50% chance that that's possible of happening.
What have you thought of Hudson Card so far?
Honestly, I think he's a good quarterback. I don't think that we've seen the quarterback we thought Purdue was getting. All spring we heard about how he's this amazing NFL prospect caliber quarterback who can make plays and make up for a lot of mistakes. And so far we've seen moments, but it hasn't been consistent. And I'm still waiting for that game where he goes out and throws for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, or, makes a lot of plays. And he is beat up a little bit right now. He took some shots against Illinois, and then obviously Iowa, he got sacked 6 times and should have been sacked 8 because he had 2 intentional groundings that were going to be sacks if he didn't just fling the ball away. Yeah. So, maybe this week is for him better than for anybody else on that team right now, because you've got to have your quarterback ready to go. I was glad to see that when the game was out of reach last weekend against Ohio State, they put Bennett Meredith in and said there's no reason. And, Hudson had taken every snap at quarterback until that point, and sending him back out there to just get beat up. So you do need to see what you have behind him, especially when he's got this lingering shoulder issue in case he can't go. But I really thought he would be a much better player than he's been so far. And, mostly, you see him being able to use his legs one week, and the next week he goes away from it, where you feel like there's opportunities to pick up yards with his legs. And looking back now, the Iowa game, there were several times where I thought, man, they're giving you 8 yards for free if you just take off running. But then you find out after the fact, he's got a shoulder issue. So maybe that played into it. You don't want to run downfield and take a big shot and hurt yourself for the rest of the year. So I think his best days are ahead of him still, because what we've seen in limited times that we've been allowed to watch, actual scrimmage type situations in practice, he's got the tangible intangibles and everything to be a great quarterback, but it hasn't translated to Saturdays yet.
What do you think is kind of holding it back? Because I mean, I think the offensive line has been consistently inconsistent. The one week they look good, another week they hold up well, and obviously it changes from week to week with the defenses that he's going up against. But I think it might have to do with the play calling as well. I know a lot of people have been frustrated with Graham Harrell because I've looked now for 7 weeks to find out what the identity of this offense is, and we thought coming into the year it was going to be air raid, but we've seen kind of a very little of that.
Yeah, and I think Purdue really early in the season was pushing to get that running game going a little bit, and it wasn't happening. That started to come around now, and now it's Purdue can't get first downs through the air, or things that you thought initially when I heard air raid in the spring and I was asking all these questions and trying to learn about it, I thought tight ends aren't going to be used much. Running backs are going to be guys that on 3rd and 2, you hand the ball off and hopefully can pick up a first down or use in a short passing game. And then the carries were going to be sparse, and that hasn't been the case. It's kind of been flipped here in recent weeks. I think Purdue has a lot of weapons at receiver. Unfortunately, another position that right now is kind of beat up a little bit. You lose Max Clear at tight end, but we've seen that tight ends are a big part of this offense now. And it's a position that Purdue's deep in, and you can really utilize that, hopefully. The offensive line has struggled. It struggled until Gus Hartwood came back in the Wisconsin game, I think it was. And then it was night and day difference, I think, after that. Looked a lot better. But now you lose Marcus Bowe, who's a really good player. We don't know what happened with Musa yet last Saturday, which if you lose those two guys, those are, coming back off freshman All-American seasons a year ago. So you can't afford to lose those guys. And it's going to be very interesting to see what 5 guys trot out on the field come the Nebraska game to see who's blocking. But you're right. You've got to be good up front, and Purdue has been in spurts, and it's not been consistent, and that's been an issue. The thing that's frustrating is it feels like every time Purdue gets in a 3rd and 1 situation, they're going to be punting, or it's going to be 4th and 1, and that's been the case. And we've seen a lot of times that Purdue goes forward on 4th and short, and you feel like that's a situation where you do gamble, and it's come back to bite the Boilermakers because you can't pick up 1 yard, and you've got to be able to pick up 1 yard. That's where games are won and lost sometimes, is gambling on those 4th downs. I think back to maybe it was the Syracuse game. It was 4th and 1 at the 5, and it's a field goal opportunity to put points on the board, which ended up being huge in that game. But Purdue elects to go for it and can't get 1 yard, and then Syracuse goes down and scores. So that's been probably the most frustrating thing. Now, I think we knew going into the season that the offensive line wasn't the strongest part of this team, but I expected it to play better consistently throughout the year and not the ups and downs that we've had so far. But it's also been a lot of shuffling with some guys in different spots.
I think on the other side of the ball, the defense, it felt like they were trending in the right direction these last couple of weeks until the Ohio State game. And obviously they're playing, Illinois and Iowa, whose offenses are, what they are and not very good, especially, the Iowa offense. But what have you seen so far that, has making you think that, Ryan Walters kind of, obviously he took over the play calling. I think it was maybe the Illinois game.
Right.
And what have you seen from this defense? Because it feels like the front 7 has played pretty well in a lot of these games, and then the secondary, has kind of had to play maybe not catch up as much. But Thieneman has obviously been the star in that secondary. But how have you seen this defense, give you hope that in the future, these next 5 games, and then in the next year or so, that they'll be improved?
Yeah, losing Marquise Wilson 2 weeks ago was a big blow, because he had been the best cover corner on the team. So now you're asking Markevius Brown, who I've stood next to him, and he's 5'8", maybe, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
Not a big dude. And then last week you have Derek Rogers Jr., a true freshman, covering Marvin Harrison, which is a mismatched nightmare. And early on, I think he got a pass breakup, and he was talking trash. And I was just thinking, you're in a world of hurt if you're going to start this now. And sure enough, he was. But I think that's an area. This is going to be better down the road, honestly, because right now it's been inheriting the guys that were here and then trying to plug in through the transfer portal, which is what this defense is right now. Now that Ryan Walters and his staff are going out and getting the guys that are system fits for what they want to do defensively, I think you look to the future. But we have seen glimpses of the defense playing pretty well, and it's kind of like the offensive line, just not consistent enough. And then when you get a situation where you're playing in Iowa, the offense has to help you out there. And I know Iowa's not a great offense, but you got to be able to score 21 points against that defense. It was one big run, really, and then one pass play that a guy got lost, going back to the one or two plays a game. But I think that one's on the offense more than the defense losing that game. But also the Fresno State game, the offense scores with 4 minutes to go, I believe. And it's okay. You have to make one stop against Fresno State, and you can't do it. And Fresno State scores the winning touchdown with 58 seconds or whatever is left on the clock. So the two are not complementing each other, each and every week, which when you can maybe get both of them clicking at the same time, we're going to see what this team is all about. But that complementary football hasn't happened yet. And then lo and behold, against Ohio State, you could even point at the special teams and say, guys, we gave up too many big plays in special teams and missed 3 field goals. So that's an issue. It just seems like, for whatever reason, every week it's something different where you feel like the defense is starting to play well. Okay, now the defense doesn't play well. You feel like the offense is trending in the right direction after Illinois, and you go to Iowa and you can't even move the ball. So it's just kind of frustrating, I guess, from that perspective, that not everything is clicking on the same day.
What grade would you give Ryan Walters 7 games into being a head coach?
I thought Purdue would be 3-3 probably right now, or I guess 3-3 through 6 games, 3-4 maybe right now. Yeah. So not far off of maybe what I expected from that initial projection. I think that's the fact that he realized going into the Illinois game, his coordinators were on the sideline up until that point, and he said, okay, Graham Harrell has to go upstairs in the press box. Kevin Kane has to go upstairs in the press box and try to rekindle that magic they had at Illinois, where Walters was calling the plays from the sideline and Kevin Kane is calling down from above and telling him what he sees. And then that seemed to work. And, obviously Ohio State is a different animal, but I think he's trying to push the right buttons right now. And I don't know that he's over his head as a first-time head coach, but there is a lot of learning that, when you're the guy versus when you're a coordinator, and, you can kind of lean on a head coach like he had Brett Bielema in the past 2 years, that, okay, what do we do here, or whatever it might be. I know he had a lot of creative control with the defense at Illinois, but now he's got a lot more on his shoulders, because you're asking him to make a decision on a 3rd and 1 or a 4th and 1. And do you step over Graham Harrell and say, this is the play we're going to run. We're not going to run the play that you called, which has happened a couple times. And he's admitted in post games that, where you say Graham did this, or, Graham Harrell called this, and he said, no, I stepped in and said, we're going to run this play, so it's on me. I think he's, right now just kind of up against it. And when you become a 2-5 team, you maybe start pressing a little bit. But the thing I like about him is he's never too high, never too low. He seems like the same guy on Monday going into a game week as he is on Saturday after a 41-7 loss. So I think he realized the situation. You got to stay even keel and keep your goals in check. And right now Purdue's goals are to get to a bowl game. So I think that he's kind of kept the guys engaged, which isn't always easy to do. I would say, probably it's hard to say for a 2-5 team to say like a B minus, but I feel like he's done a good job keeping this team together through some adversity where they've lost key playmakers, key linemen, and they continue to lose games. But yet every week you talk to the guys and they're very positive and think this is the point our season can turn around on Saturday.
Yeah, I'll leave you. I'll leave you with this, and you kind of mentioned recruiting, and how I think they've done pretty well on the recruiting trail so far. But with these last 5 games before they get to the off season and National Signing Day, and all that goes into that. What do you need to see in these last 5 games that would make a Purdue the fan base, feel good that this program is headed in the right direction going into the off season?
Yeah, you need to see just progress. And even if Purdue doesn't get to a bowl game, you'd like to see. Obviously, Purdue fans want to beat Indiana, regardless. You could be 0 and
Yeah.
11, and that's a huge game to go out and win. So you got to win the buckets, and I think you have to prove that there's some fight in you here over these last few games. Even if you go to Michigan and get blown out, you want to see the team compete, which I don't think it did very well against Ohio State. So, and then moving forward, I think Purdue fans will be very happy with the talent coming here in the future. And it's not the NFL. There is no tanking for a high draft pick. So you might as well go out and win every game. But that's the main thing I'm looking for is, especially now with some younger guys getting opportunities that maybe we didn't expect. We've seen Jerron Tibbs at receiver the last few weeks, Jaden Dixon-Veal getting opportunities at receiver, Mershawn Rice, who all year I was like, where is this guy? We heard about him, coming into the year, and then he hadn't played, and then he's the best receiver against Ohio State. You want to see that, and then I've been really impressed with Devin Mockabee the last couple of weeks. I know he took a lot of blame for the fumbles early on, and he only fumbled once last year. But maybe that's what you'd like to see is more guys, figuring it out and trending in the right direction. And Mockabee said after the Ohio State game, like, listen, we're still in it to win the whole thing. Like our mindset hasn't changed. And the team plays like that. I feel like they go out and believe they can beat anybody. It just, for whatever reason, didn't translate to the Ohio State game. But if they can do that, if Purdue can go out and play these last 5 games and you feel like that's a team that could have won that game, and then you finish the season beating Indiana, I think that's about all you can ask for right now. And if you get a bowl trip out of it, even better.
You can follow him on Twitter or X at Samuel T. King. He does a tremendous job covering the Boilermakers for the Journal and Courier. Sam, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
That was Sam King of the Journal and Courier out of Lafayette. Thank you so much to him for giving some perspective. Hopefully, he walked you guys off the ledge a little bit if you were out there. I don't think a lot of people are completely looking over the edge, but some people are starting to creep towards it. But you got to remember, it's still year one under Ryan Walters, and there's a lot of positive things that can come out of these last 5 games. And I think that there's some things that have been bright spots. We've talked about those, and there's still a lot of things to work on as well. So that'll do it for this midweek podcast. You make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're getting more and more viewers each week, but subscribers is not really following that kind of trend. So make sure that you are subscribing to the channel to get the video version, or follow on Apple Podcast or Spotify or wherever you choose to listen to this podcast. We're seeing it definitely trending up with as the season goes along. So I appreciate you guys listening in and tuning in and commenting on the videos. I appreciate all of you guys. So we will have a Sunday show like we normally do. It'll be a little bit different. Won't be a guest or anything. We're going to try to do a mid-season report card. So let's think of it as a midterm. We'll go through the offense, defense, might go position by position to kind of give a grade out to each thing. We'll give a grade to the coaching staff as well, as I kind of gave to Sam, kind of what kind of grade he would give to Ryan Walters if he were 7 games into his head coaching career. So we'll kind of give a grade to each unit on the team so far, and we'll see how the report card comes back and whether or not you would want to take that report card back to your parents, or would you try to fudge some of the letters to turn an F into an A, or a C into an A, something, like that. You ever do that? I never did. Straight A student over here. Maybe got the B occasionally. So, but until then, thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the Behind the Rails of Purdue football on the Believe Network, presented by Bet Online. I've been your host, Brice Vance. See you guys on Sunday.